Okay, so welcome back to the World Autism Summit. We are thrilled to have Giri Puligandla, and he's the Executive Director of the Canadian Mental Health Association. I hope I pronounced your last name right.
You did. Thanks.
Of the Edmonton, Alberta, Canada region. He's built a strong reputation in Edmonton's health and social services sector for innovative service design, cross-system planning, data mobilization, and community empowerment. Before joining CMHA Edmonton, he held senior leadership roles in Homeward Trust and as a manager in the Government of Alberta Addiction and Mental Health Branch. Much earlier in his career, Giri was executive director with the Alberta Caregivers Association and Schizophrenia Society of Alberta Edmonton chapter. He also holds an MSc in health promotion from the University of Alberta. So Giri, tell me, what's inspired you to be a part of the World Autism Summit?
Well, there are many reasons, Karen. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to be a part of the summit. I'd say the first reason is just my growing recognition of how important it is for our society and for communities to recognize neurodivergence and to actually there's all sorts of words that are just loaded, and so I was going to say accommodate or include, but you get what I'm saying there. The other part is just my own sort of family experience. My son lives with ADHD and definitely sort of has some classic neurodivergent qualities. And I wonder about him and people like him who are quite capable, who bring so much creativity and talent and strengths, and whether our society is able to deal with that. And then, of course, from my mental health background, I see it all the time. We serve at CMHA. We serve a lot of people who live with autism, who live with various types of neurodiversity, and the challenges of social interaction, the challenges with inclusion. I mean, obviously those bear down on people's mental health. And so for us to be able to create, a world where people's mental health is actually valued and supported, we have to deal with, this, 20% of the population, of the global population, that are neurodivergent. And so how do we change who we are as a society and as people, as communities, as friends, as coworkers, so that we can make that possible.
I love that. I love that you're focusing on the gifts, strengths, and talents. That's what we embrace too, focusing on the positives. So how do you hope to make the biggest impact in the world around your area of expertise?
Well, I mean, this has been a journey for me. I've had the privilege, I'll say, of my career when I was still in university and then was introduced to mental health in an academics in my undergrad, from an academic standpoint, neuroscience and pharmacology and all that, and then very early on discovering lived experience and actually lived experience of families. So I was just thinking about it the other day. First 10 years of my career were with the Schizophrenia Society and with the Caregivers Association. And at that time, we used to use the term family movement because the family perspective was so important, but not recognized and not valued by anybody else. And so I think for me, this has been a long journey of trying to fix the obvious problems in terms of how families are supported and looking at mental health, looking at other issues as a problem for the whole family that requires solutions for the whole family, and not this sort of individualistic kind of approach that we have. So I'd say that the change, I guess the change that I want to see, and the change that is really driving me, is to shift the way we look at things like mental health and neurodiversity and so forth, away from, largely medical, a medical lens, and no disrespect either, because certainly doctors and the medical systems play an important role in various services, but most of mental health and neurodiversity is addressed with strong families, strong communities. I mean, that really, and that's how it's been for thousands and thousands of years. And so we wonder why people are struggling, why people aren't getting the support they need, and it's because we've put too much on the medical side, and we need to take that out of the center and actually put the family, put peer support, put that, really what those interpersonal interactions that enable wellness, that enable mental health, that enable, identity. I mean, those really need to be at the center, and whatever we can do to support those, we know that we'll see better outcomes. So that's my mission.
I love what you're saying. That makes so much sense. And, we can learn so much from other countries about that, because I think we've lost a lot of that in North America. We've dissected it and separated it out so much, like the family gets separated, and people put people in boxes and separate that whole thing out. And I mean, I was talking to some people from Italy that are going to be part of this conference, and they just embrace the family, and they make that family a whole, like one entity, and it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, not related to autism, but one of the projects that were involved here in Edmonton is actually South Asian addiction mental health service that it's like it involves an interdisciplinary team with, a psychiatrist and nurse and addiction counsel and all this. But what really makes it different from what is available, or not really available actually, but anyway, it's a whole topic for another day. But it's theoretically available to other more to mainstream the population, is that it embraces the family, and so there were examples given to me about within the health system, somebody comes in, they're determined to be the patient. The relationship is between the clinician and the patient, and the family's left out.
Right.
If the patient consents to involving the family, then the family can be involved, but even that is quite limited, right? Whereas in this clinic, the psychiatrist was telling me that, often it's, family members coming in with their loved one, really concerned about their loved one. And we understand that the only way that this person is going to recover is with that continued support.
Right.
So they're able to do detox at home because they trust the family, that the family loves and cares for this person and is going to make sure that they're okay. When friends bring somebody in, again, same thing. They involve them because obviously they care enough to bring this person in. They're committing to help them. So, but they can do that in this paradigm, but in conventional kind of healthcare, they won't do that. Like it's right. So, and I just wonder, I mean, how much, like, the research is excruciatingly clear that when you have strong family support, you have strong support from your social network, you do better, notwithstanding everything else. So, why are we still in this kind of modality, or this mode where we think that this sort of individualistic approach is actually going to achieve any of the outcomes, and be surprised when people aren't doing well because they're alienated from their family and from the social network. So anyway,
I know I could go on a tangent with that, with like you're chopped off. You can't talk to your kid after they're 18. Okay, done. Okay.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It is. Okay. Before we go down that rabbit hole, what is your biggest why for you? I think you've addressed this to some degree. What is your biggest why for what you do?
Well, I mean, I could be extreme, and it's not selfish in the purest form, but obviously I want my son live in a better world than
Yeah.
what we're in right now. And I mean, and the thing is, I look at him and I mean, he's got a lot going for him. So
Mhm.
knock on wood, I hope he doesn't struggle as much as other kids who are living with neurodiversity. But then I look at those other kids and I think, wow, like, why are we allowing this? Why are we allowing this experience? The very common negative experience.
Mhm.
And then what are we doing as a society to actually promote that kind of experience, in the sense that, bullying and
Oh,
making fun of people, and it's just normal. Like, that is normal. And I mean, it's, I think, becoming a little bit less normal. It's certainly when I was growing up, totally normal. That weird kid, ostracized, make fun of them. Everybody, like, as they're younger, they test their ability to be mean,
mhm.
largely with that person, right? And we all grew up with at least a couple of people in our lives. And I hope that many of us, much later on in life, think back to those times when, maybe we made fun of somebody, maybe we made somebody feel bad, and we feel bad. But, like, 20 years, 30 years down the road, feeling bad about making somebody feel bad or bullying somebody is not it's not, like, useful. It's not meaningful
No.
in any way. So the big why really is about social change. But then I think from a more practical standpoint, there's we're losing out on who knows what we don't have no concept of what we're missing, what we're losing, in terms of innovation, in terms of new directions for us as human beings, because we're stifling some of the most talented and creative people. It's just like, anyway, so I mean, so that and then, I feel like, we have this machine that hasn't worked for a long time, and I think this is global too, right? I mean, I
I do
can
too.
complain about the Canadian healthcare system and social care and disability supports and all that, and I look at the US and similar challenges. I don't think there's a country in this world I can say, yeah, we got it. We have the solution here, and our healthcare system and our service systems are built actually to support people in self-actualization and being integrated and prospering and all that. Nobody's doing that. So I think maybe it's time to kind of put a tarp over the old machine and
I love that. I love your attitude. I think that's what we're about too, is making the world better. Attitudinal healing and shifting to make, to help people shift attitudes and heal a lot of the things that have not worked in the past. Hopefully they'll work better in the future. And, like, everybody counts. Everybody matters.
yes.
Everybody, no matter what, everybody counts. Everybody has a heart. Everybody's, born to be on this planet, and every single person counts. And
Yeah. And I mean, well, I guess we'll get into.
Okay, we'll get into that. Okay.
Sorry.
I'll get into we won't do Karen philosophy. Okay.
I like Karen philosophy, so anytime you want.
How can we set up systems of success in partnership relationships?
So I think, yeah, that's a big question. I think, just in keeping in the spirit of what I've said, what I've already said, it is to a large extent packing some of our old thinking and our assumptions and our feelings and our beliefs into a little box and putting it on the shelf, and then actually being open to learning from each other and imagining in ways that we haven't done before. Like, I think that's usually when I'm involved in initiatives that cross different sectors, different perspectives, there's something inspiring in the middle, right? And we're able to step out of our take off our various hats, step outside of our boxes, and just kind of be in a space, a conceptual space that, is, automatically creative and automatically, sends us into a different direction that is informed from multiple perspectives and experiences, instead of us kind of getting locked into a way thinking. So I think that's probably the most important thing. And I think that starts with people not being satisfied with the status quo, and saying, you know what's happening now, what we're doing now, the way we're looking at things now is just not making sense.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. So let's park those mindsets and start looking at things in different ways. And I mean, I've been, it's one of my kind of mental health practices. Before I go to bed, I listen to before I go to bed, I watch, and then I eventually listen to shows about space or physics, and particularly quantum theory and all that. And it just makes me think about, even like in the deep sciences, there's a way of thinking that, explains some, but not all. And then some new idea comes, and usually this idea is just completely out, just throws everything else out, right? And we serially do that over and over again. But then when it comes to how we support each other and how we, like, our sort of social fabric, if you will, we don't seem to do that, right? We're still doing the same things that we did essentially 70 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And like, and the questioning is so quiet, and there's no avenue to just completely to do an Einstein, or to do like
an
a
Einstein,
Newton, or whatever, right? There just isn't that kind of that kind of venue for doing that. So I'm hoping, actually, I mean, this is also why the summit excites me. It's because you've got all these ideas coming from all over the world, and who knows, you watch one, or you hear somebody talk about something, and maybe there's, maybe you don't, it does, a lot of what somebody's saying doesn't resonate with you, but maybe there's a few ideas there that start you thinking on a different path, right? And so anyway, so I think that when it comes to sort of that collaboration, how do we all work together? It starts with that desire for, like, that recognition that this isn't okay. We're not done with the, like, what we've got now is just not sufficient. And that desire and that inspiration to find the, the next thing, and find a better way of looking at things, thinking about things, and doing things.
That's great. Yeah, I don't like silo thinking, because it's so myopic in its focus, and we just need to, embrace other organizations, and, everybody has something to share. Every organization has something to share. We can all, collaborate and cooperate together, and there's no one right answer. Everybody can learn from everybody, and that's what this is about.
I mean, but the irony, of course, is that, I mean, we tend to be, and again, like, maybe this is cultural, maybe in other parts of the world there's more sort of collective kind of thinking, but I think that we're put in these sort of boxes, and we're trained to think from within these boxes, but nothing in the world is singular. Nothing, like, everything is complex, from making my toast in the morning, right? There's a lot of factors that come into play in terms of how that toast turns out, right? And so, I mean, like, how can we think that anything is like, how can we think that anything is not automatically complex and doesn't require this kind of broad view of any issue?
That's beautiful. I love it. Okay. Can you talk about neurodiversity and its relationship with mental health?
Yeah, so it's I don't know if funny isn't the right word, but when I started with the Schizophrenia Society, it was like 23 years ago. It's remember that the people in the Schizophrenia Society, they didn't want to be associated with those people, and they used words that
At that time.
at that time. Similarly, people in the neurodiversity community didn't want to be associated with those people, again using similarly offensive language, again, which was normal at the time. And it always surprised me because in the end, when you think about it, and I think a lot about adults, adults who are, again, well, I guess on two ends of the spectrum, the ones who are actually doing quite well, who have a lot of strengths, are able to live independently, are able to kind of, again, I'm going to use the word self-actualize in some way, but then experience limitations in terms of loneliness, alienation. They have trouble making friends. They have trouble getting a job. They have trouble, and not because of their capabilities or their personalities or anything like that, but because the world is not built to actually accommodate them. And then you look at the other end of the spectrum, people who are very severely disabled by their mental illness, or by their neurology, I guess, and just the struggles. You can get supports up until you're 18, and then off you go. and then you're just sort of in this kind of free for all. You never know whether you're going to get what you need, or how long, if you do, or if you are getting what you need, how long you'll get that, right? And then the folks in the middle, I often think about them, the ones who they just they don't hit the threshold to get that sort of the top level of supports, and then they're not capable. Sorry, I shouldn't put it that way, but they struggle. They have more struggles, challenges to overcome, that make it harder for integration. And so they need like really specialized opportunities. So again, like, I just don't see that there's a difference. Like there really isn't a difference in terms of what people need to live well. And I mean, it really comes down to what label did somebody throw at you, right?
Oh yeah, that's
again, like the medical side. And I mean, I would argue that mental health is neurodiversity. I don't think anybody can convincingly say that we know enough about brain, physiology and chemistry, and also just to bring quantum physics back in, like the nature of neuroscience, of our brains and our nervous systems and consciousness and all that, to be able to say, oh yeah, this is definitely different than that.
right.
I mean, you look at the way their experiences, you look at again, to use medical language, symptoms and things like that. Like, really, is there that much of a difference? So anyways, that's we'll just park that for somebody else to react to. How about that?
It's a horse of a different color, right? Have we even scratched the surface, right?
Exactly. And I know we haven't. And it's because we continue to use this very, very narrow lens, the medical lens. And again, like, no, it's not meant as a disrespect.
No.
It's just like that need for a diagnosis before you can get anything is the barrier, right? And unfortunately, I think like a lot of it a lot of diagnosis is conflated. I mean, it's a point in time, and but then people get these labels on them, right? That aren't actually that useful, other than getting through the gate and accessing the services that they need.
And
What's more important is that they have a set of needs,
how does
right?
that compare to,
Sorry.
sorry to jump in, but just curious, how does that compare to the US or the other countries with diagnosis?
Well, I mean, I don't think that there is I mean, again, like, it's not like I've done a global study of different systems. But I mean, I guess the problem might fall to the relationship between, and here's, I'm going to go on another but the relationship between public policy
Yeah.
and service systems and organizing service systems. And usually you need something concrete and objective and tangible as that sort of, for your decision tree. Is this person to go to that? Yes, no. What do they have? This? Yes, no. And so we have a whole bunch of, and so the ease, the convenience of a diagnosis, right? Where you have a trusted professional making a determination, and that determination then being the basis for everything else. I mean, it gets too loose. So
Right.
Right.
It's tricky.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, frankly, you've got, if you have family members saying this person needs this, you've got that person's social network saying, oh, this person needs this, and then you have the person themselves saying, I need this. Like, really, do we need a third party to try to fit this person's needs and strengths into a label, into a sort of a box again, right? And I think that's the problem. Most people don't fit into boxes. The classic sort of schizophrenia, or the classic autism, or the classic, I mean, yes, there are people, but there's so many people who don't fit that, right? I know. Then you got to put them in a box in order to put them on the conveyor belt, right? I mean, that's the way our systems are built. And I'm being I definitely have a cynical tone this morning.
That's okay. I think people will appreciate that a lot. There's going to be a lot of people on here. So how has your understanding of mental health changed over the years?
Well, to start, I was 100% all about biomedical. Right. And it's the neuroscience. I was just fascinated by neuroscience, and the dopamines and the serotonins, the neurotransmitters, and how everything, and then also how that then translated into consciousness and awareness and behavior. And it just seemed like I feel like mental health and this whole sort of space is this intersection between biology and philosophy, right?
Wow.
Reality and like all these things, like, and I think that is what propelled me into why my job at the Schizophrenia Society initially was so fascinating, because that, to me, that somebody can experience a different reality just because there's some chemical difference in their brain, so to speak, just astounded me. It made me think, wow, we do not know enough about this universe, for that. So, but then very quickly, like I said earlier, when I had all these impressions about mental health, and particularly from neuroscience and from a pharmacological approach. Again, undergrad, right? I have no real credentials in that space. But and then the first time that I met people living with schizophrenia, again, like, it surprised me, because I had this image in my head of what a person with schizophrenia looks like, straight jackets and, bizarre behavior. And then there were these guys who were like, no, not only guys, there were, these people who were my age, because I was still in university at that time. Cool people, right? Lot in common, music and interests and all that kind of stuff. But I had a future and they didn't, right? It's just, it didn't seem fair. And then learning with the family perspective and like the family experience, trying to get help for their loved one, trying to get services, trying to get support. I remember one lady, she used to, like, it was like at least once a year, if not more, her daughter would be in in the psychiatric institution here. She'd either escape or like leave or be discharged. And then this poor lady, she would go to, like, so her daughter would leave Edmonton and go to San Francisco. And her mom would go to San Francisco. Again, this was like almost every year, if not more often than that, and look for her on the streets. Right. And it's just like, it just made me think, wow, like, wow, this is, and there was nothing, there's very little regard for the family, right? They weren't that involved. In fact, if they said anything, if their tone was a little bit more, assertive than what, the care providers would tolerate, I mean, that would be the end. Like they wouldn't be listened to at all. They'd be excluded, right? So I mean, it's just so it made me understand. And then also just seeing how there are people, with very, arguably, from a symptomatic standpoint, like they look like that. Wow, they're like, you've got a lot to deal with, but they're doing well because they have strong family support, right? The families have had the opportunity and the privilege of learning about what they can do and like how they can support their loved one. And then usually that person also has friends, right? And I started to think, you know what? It doesn't seem to matter about medications, and it doesn't seem to matter as much about everything else that the health system is providing. What seems to matter more is that this guy has friends, and the family is there, and the family understands, and the family is like doing whatever they can, which again is a privilege. If you're living in poverty, if you never had those opportunities, or if you have very deep mindsets around these things, like, I mean, it's hard, right? But then like necessarily, I think that makes it harder on the person. So, and then of course, it's the irony, of course, is when my son started to experience problems in his daycares, early on. And I mean, thankfully, his kindergarten teacher recognized, okay, on one hand, this kid is really hard to handle. On the other hand, he's reading books, and like obviously has, and like knows every country and flag and whatever. And, and managed to get a psych assessment for him. And then I talked to other families, and their kids are much older, and they're just flabbergasted that they were able to get the school to get a psych assessment when he was 5. Their kids are like 13, 14, 15, and trying. So it just makes me think that we just need far more support in community. And we need to stop like this sort of medicalizing. We need to be thinking about social inclusion, because I just worry about how much I'm going to say it. I've already been a little bit controversial so far. I'm just going to say it. How much harm we might be doing by sticking with the old ways of thinking and keeping the old systems and the old, it does harm. It does harm. And we can't ignore that. We can't just say, oh, well, that was, externalities that played into those negative outcomes. No, when, we don't know enough about, actually how, like all the, from a statistics standpoint, from a data standpoint, about that. But I mean, how many stories have I heard you know,
Mhm.
over the, 20 plus years. And they're the same stories and
Mhm.
very consistent about how the family members are treated, how the person, the person with lived experience is treated. And so anyway, so
It's time.
it's
It's
time.
time.
That's
It
a
is
thing.
time. It is
Yeah, support and understanding. That really that needs to be our focus.
right on. So what do you think gets in the way of mental health and wellness for people with autism?
Yeah, this is the tough one, right? So again, it's the social mindsets. It's our ability to accommodate, you know, different personalities, different ways of looking at the world, different conceptualizations of interpersonal interactions. And again, I don't know how it is in other countries. Maybe there's more tolerance for diversity of, of experience and, in interaction, personalities and all that. But here I like there's a certain expectation, an idealized behavior or a pattern of behavior
Mhm.
that is acceptable, and anything else is unacceptable. And I think about workforce, kind of the workplaces. I think about schools, like the main milieus, right? That people are in. Schools are not able to tolerate divergent behaviors, divergent kind of ways of thinking.
Mhm.
Um, Most of them, like if you can't fit into this sort of mold, then they toss you. Again, like my son is very fortunate. He was put in a program where it was like, the pro and con, of course, of being self-directed with ADHD, but we'll leave that again for another time. But far more, understanding about sort of twice exceptionalism, that this person can be a genius on one hand, but then have like real social problems on the other.
Yes.
You know, so the schools are just not built for that. The teachers are not trained adequately, and most of it, I'm sure when you find teachers that are capable, or that are quite capable in this sense, it's probably less from their training and more to do with their own experiences and the people
Mhm.
right, throughout their lives, right? And so that's too much of a throw of the dice in terms of whether your son or daughter actually has like a good experience in school. If it's like, they're fortunate enough to have a teacher who, understands neurodiversity from a personal standpoint. So how do you deal with that? And from a workplace standpoint, oh man, we've got very limited sort of, and when we talk about accommodation, and whether we're talking about mental health or we're talking about neurodiversity, you can't access accommodation without a medical note, right? So
Mhm.
again, it kind of throws you back into this, again, over medicalization. And then a lot of people can't even access that because it's like, well, this isn't a medical issue, right?
Mhm.
What you're dealing, your behavior, the way, your ability to perceive how others are feeling, and engage sort of your own behavior based on that. That's not a medical issue, right? Like, so I just think that that's going to be a real problem. And then when you look at the service systems, again, there's this orientation towards severe disability, right? And then it's even that's not sufficient, but again, that's for another time.
Mhm.
But then for everybody who's like, capable, I mean, they don't get over the bar, right?
Mhm.
To get any supports. And then so you have them struggling, you have the family struggling. And then that also, when you can't get over the bar, you get all this questioning. Well, do you actually, are you, maybe you're just making this up, maybe you're just irresponsible, maybe you're just, odd, right? Like, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
and then, I just think that that's probably the biggest challenge. So but that starts with, I mean, that's not about the health system. It's not about the school system. It's not about our sort of labor market. It's about how we look at each other as human beings, as how we look at each other and what we consider to be our communities. And it really is a change. We've talked before about with others about the village, right? The concept of village. And as much as we've gained so much from the technology and the urbanization and all this, we've lost something too. And I think it's no wonder that we struggle so much, because that is, we used to just care about each other. We used to automatically accommodate people. We used to automatically take people for their strengths, because we needed those strengths as a village. And so again, I wasn't alive 1,000 years ago or whatever, so
you were, maybe you were.
Yeah, but I'm sure, yeah, well, that's again another topic for another week. I mean, the pros and cons are certainly there. We have much better life, well, arguably, I guess, much better lifestyles and a quality of life and all that kind of stuff. But then socially, like that social fabric is disintegrating, right? And I think that when we wonder why we see social disorder on the streets and homelessness and addiction and family, disruption and all these suicides and all these things, and and maybe it's too hard for us to actually ask the question, well, maybe it comes down to us not being human with each other anymore, right?
I was going to ask you also, like with the people coming to our country, North America, and people going to other countries, how that plays into all this. But that might be a much more complex situation too.
Well, I think that they're, again, very, very Canadian perspective that I'm giving here. So take it with a grain of salt. But when my family's from India, and so I often kind of listen. I listen when people are talking, and there's this sort of they put our mentality and like this sort of Western mentality on a pedestal, and they regard it as something better than what they have. And the way they look at things, and I wonder how pervasive that is. And it's not even Western, because even that term is useless to me. It's a very individualistic kind of approach and conceptualization of who we are in our relationship to the people around us. And I just think that is wrong. It's the wrong mentality, and I think maybe it got us some advantage, but after a while, that's not going to be useful in the long game. In fact, it's going to cause more harm in the long game. And so there's ways of looking at who we are and the relationship we have with our our immediate social networks, our families, our friends, our community, our culture, all that kind of stuff, that in this mosaic, in this sort of melting pot kind of model that we have here, when you lose that, it's a problem, right? And I think we need to kind of maybe turn to a way of thinking that actually makes us value our families, our communities, our neighbors and all that in a different way, and understand that's where the solutions lie. It's not about and not to criticize all the various public policy interventions around social disorder and kind of all these ills of society, addiction and so forth, but it all comes down to family. It all comes down to the community around people. And so how do we actually rediscover, recover, whatever it is, that ancient kind of connection that we have with each other
As humanity.
as humanity.
Yes,
Such
human
a
to
simple
human.
word, right?
Yeah.
But such a deep
It's
word.
a deep word, yeah. And yeah, I mean, we have mixed relationships with different cultures, and there's embracing everybody's culture, and again, we to avoid silos and yeah, all that.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's just a lot.
Yeah.
And finally, the last question I have is, do you think there are any obvious solutions or magic bullets, or are there underlying issues as complicated as they are? Are they as complicated, and I think they are, as they appear to be?
Yeah. And so this is, yeah. And I mean, I've talked about this. I mean, it is, as you said, complicated. That's it.
Those are your words.
It's complicated. It's complex. Because we're talking about changing attitudes, and I mean, even as those words came out of my mouth, there was a visceral reaction that I had, because changing attitudes, people have been talking about that for so long, and really it's lost all meaning, because what does that even mean? Like, how do you even do that? But I mean, that's what it is, right? But then we're fighting. I feel like we're trying to work against a way of interacting with each other that has become so divisive, and where the prank and the takedown is prized above the connection, about and I just think that, is this like, how steep is this challenge? At the same time, I just think that it's also as complex as that is, it's also so basic and so simple to who we are as humans. Like, we like to be loved, right? Every one of us, like, I mean, it's a basic thing, right? It's more basic than even like thirst or hunger, right? That love, just, we all like to be loved. And so why is it so hard for me to conceive of a world, of a future, where empathy is the most, most basic element of it, right? I mean, it really just comes down to that. If, understanding that this person is also wanting to be loved,
Right.
and not feel bad, right? So I think that so tolerance, and being more than toleration, it's understand. Yeah, I get, let's start with that, right? I mean, it is tolerance, but it's also appreciation, right? Appreciation for people who are different, and just, being understanding of that. And we've come a long way as a society in terms of tolerance, and in terms of acceptance, and appreciation, from a cultural, intercultural, multicultural standpoint, from various disabilities. But this is, we haven't done it enough around mental health and neurodiversity. But maybe what I think is so hard now, I hope that in a couple of years, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, everyone's cool with that now. Right?
That'd be great.
But like, we literally kind of went from that, because I mean, there was a time when, racism and sexism and all these things were more the rule, right? And now, I mean, we're in a different world, right? Talking to somebody, 40 years ago, and explaining, no, that's not how we do things anymore. That's not how we look at things anymore. So things change, and they change. So that's my hope. But we're not going to get there unless we stop looking at these things as medical.
That's right.
Right. That it really comes down to the social piece.
One of my favorite teachers of all time, Dr. Jerry Jampolsky, would say that love is letting go of fear. And I think that fear gets in a lot of people's ways because it stifles creativity, and it also it stops people. They don't understand. They don't understand what's going on with people with mental health issues, autism, schizophrenia. The more we explain it and help them understand, then they won't be as afraid. We educate, and we help them understand.
Absolutely.
Get past the fear, and then we'll find love.
That's right. That's exactly it. That's it. And actually to remember love.
Yeah.
Right. You get past fear by remembering love, because I think
Practicing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's too easy to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's not just hokey pokey words, they're really real.
oh man, they're the most important. It's the most important thing, right? And I mean, even for us to, and I agree, like it feels like, suggesting that the answer is love.
Yeah, I know.
He's like, oh, like really?
Who
You're gonna
is
say
this
that?
lady, or who is this
But
guy?
it's true.
Yeah.
It is true, right? And maybe that's quite telling of who we are as a society, that we have a visceral reaction to something just so important.
Yeah.
It's something we can work on together.
Right on. Do you have any other comments you want to say as closing comments?
I guess the only closing comment I would say is just to sort of temper everything that I had just said, and understanding that, like everybody plays an important role in supporting people living with autism, with neurodiversity, with various, mental health challenges. There's no question that there's a role for the medical, for a medical perspective, for medical services and all that. It's just not the most important thing. The most important thing is supporting the family, supporting the individual, supporting their network, so that they're not isolated, so that they can be part of a village.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that's all I have to say.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being part of the World Autism Summit. We really, really appreciate you.
Great. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Gary.